So my kiddo's summer vacation starts so soon, and I have a bunch of videos to do. Turbo time. Today we're going to be talking about I guess today we're talking about these. Yeah, today we're talking about these. These wonderful boxes are from Bastl. This is Bastl Kastle 2, Wavebard and Effects Wizard. Wavebard is a very cool sample player, and Effects Wizard is an effects processor. This is like a micro-modular setup that you can almost fit in your pocket. It doesn't sound micro though. Let's jam a little bit. So that's a sense of what these two can do together. Here's a little bit more about them. They're both using the same hardware as far as I can tell, which makes it a really cool platform for these two and whatever else Bastl has planned. These are solid little boxes that you can throw in a jacket pocket or a bag. I mean, with a little care for these little knobs that they have, and even tinier patch points. 0 to 5 volts if that means anything to you. And you use these cute little jumper cables to patch with. Ins and outs up top to connect with multiple devices for sync and audio. So these play nice for your favorite travel synth, and maybe even some modular signals. You just gotta get it into the right mode. Read the manual for that. And there's a USB port as well for power, loading sample packs, updates, etc. And then at the bottom, yep, battery powered. So these little friends are super portable. I've had the Effects Wizard for a little bit and it was fun, but I really like having like all one thing together, similar to the way that I use modular. But now that I have two Kastls, I'm into it. The big feature here is that despite their little size, the patching is actually really interesting. Don't expect to have exact control over attenuation, VCAs, all that stuff like you do in Eurorack, but still, pretty good. The decisions that Bastl's made make these really fun, surprising, at times chaotic, in a very satisfying way. This one, Wavebard, it's a cool little sample player. It has a bunch of samples preloaded on it. Actually, most of what you're hearing is the preloaded samples. But of course you can load up your own up to 32 banks of 32 samples. But I think each bank has to have the same number of samples. It'll hold a max of 89 seconds of mono 441 or 44.5 seconds of stereo 441 samples. And all that loading is done on a nifty web app, which is pretty easy to use. You just go to the site, load up your samples, organize the samples in banks, and put them in whatever order you want. In that web app, you can also edit scales. Yes, there's a built-in quantizer that you can edit your own scales up to 32 of them. There's a rhythm editor. Yes, this thing has built-in rhythms too. And there's a max of 32 gate patterns. Once you're done editing, you can save it for later, sharing with friends, or you can generate a file that you can transfer onto this. The ability to save packs with all this other stuff makes it really fun to trade with friends. I think Bastl is working on building that up in the community and it's really cool to see. FX Wizard is an effects processor with 9 effects: delay, flanger, freezer, panner, crusher, slicer, pitcher, replayer, and a shifter. This thing is just wild. The effects sound great and really reward exploration. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of all the effects because I feel like other people can speak to it better. You should know that each one of them offers a new way for you to mess with your audio, and it's really fun. Even for me that doesn't really dig into these types of effects all that often. You can cycle through the effects as part of your patching, which is really fun. This also has a stereo widening effect, which makes things sound really big. I don't know how that stuff works, but it sounds great to me, especially in headphones. Before I make up the next patch, let's go through the panels. Over here, we've got WaveBard and FX Wizard right next to each other. They're already linked up, and the recorder's recording just in case I decide to make any sounds. Okay, over here on WaveBard, let's start there first. We've got all these knobs, and then we've got these patch points here. Over here on the right side, we have knobs for pitch, sample, and LFO. On the left side, we have knobs for pitch mod, sample mod, and LFO mod. So we have pitch, sample, LFO. There's a secondary level to this. If you hold down shift, this is to control volume, filter, tempo, and then over on the left side, input, and then this is effects. On the left hand side, there's a delay, and on the right hand side, there's a chorus and flanger. And then on this one, this selects rhythms, which is actually really cool. Just like I mentioned before, you can edit those rhythms on the web app. All right, let's get to patch points. Over here, we have sync and audio. There's sync in and out. And then there's plus and minus. This just gives you the high and low value of voltage for the device. This actually allows you to do some cool modulation. This can be used to bring in different signals from your modular or other devices. Out, this just is sync out, so you can use it to sync with other devices, or you can pass LFOs and stuff like that to sync with external gear that way. Audio, in and out, so in and out, and then there's ground available as well. Other patch points are really interesting, so let's look at them. They're sort of split up into top row and bottom row, and they're labeled, so take a look at that. On the top row of this one is bank, so if you were to apply CV values in there, it would switch the bank of samples, which is cool. So you have a much larger bank of samples to use. And then reset for this LFO. So you can reset this LFO with other LFOs or other voltage or external sync, anything. This little patch bay here is the LFO outputs. I like how they've labeled the outputs. They're sort of all surrounded, or the left and right. You can see anything that has the white sort of surrounds are outputs. Anyway, this top row here is triangle and this bottom row is square. So you have gate out. These are the rhythms that you're editing in the editor. You have envelope out. This is an envelope follower on the input. I assume if you don't have any input, it's listening to whatever the samples are that are being played. Then we have the CV out, GRC. What do those stand for? When that's receiving inputs and it is high, it's going to randomize. When it is at 0, it's going to invert what the gate pattern is, which is really cool. And you can get those high or low from plus minus here on the sync. R is reset, so that will reset the sequencer for the gate and CV. C is for CV, and it operates in the same way that the gate input works. If you have a high value going into the C, it's going to randomize where in the pattern this CV is starting from. If you have a low for the C in, what it's going to do, it's going to take this CV pattern and it's going to invert it. Over here on the left-hand side, we have all these things for modding. Right here are patch points for the pitches. So on the top it says free, so it's not quantized. On the bottom it says note. So these are quantized values, which you set with this knob holding down bank. And then over here, on the top row, we have patch points for the sample mod. So any values going in here are going to change what the sample is. So you can switch around what those samples are via the sequencer, by the LFO, other values from external sequencers, etc. The bottom here controls the LFO mod, so increasing or decreasing the rate of the LFO. So you can patch in other values and have your modulation be modulated. Holding down bank opens up a whole new level of controls for these three knobs. The top one is scales, so that's the notes that your samples are going to be quantized to. This knob would select the root of that scale. And then this knob is the fine tune. This knob in the center is for sample length. If we go to the left, samples are going to be played in reversed with a logarithmic type curve of the VCA. And if we go to the right, samples are played forward with an exponential curve. Further forward, the longer the sample. And we can patch into this top row here, and that's going to affect the mod of the length. So if we hold down shift, That's a second level of control for this. We can adjust whether we want additional voltage coming in here to decrease or increase the length. And then this trig in, this is the key part. This is where you're gonna trigger the samples. Let's take one of these cables, we'll put it into the sync. So it's just getting clock, put it into the trig. So that's just clock. It's going at this speed. And there's our sample bank. Say if we want a different rhythm than that, we can patch this gate output. Let's turn this to find a pattern we like. These are ones that I made using that web editor. Cool, and then if we want to move this beat around, let's take the CV out, put that into the sample mod. It's not changing because we haven't moved where this knob is. Turn to the left. And then let's bring in some effects. Something that's different about FX Wizard, let's look over here. So we've got time, feedback, and the LFO on the left-hand side, and we have time mod, feedback mod, and LFO mod on the right-hand side. See how they're quite similar? The mods are the same in the center, syncs are the same over here. The difference in FX Wizard is instead of having different sample banks, it has different effects. The pattern generation is similar to here. As far as I know, you can't edit these quite yet, but I'm sure in future this will be compatible with the wave editor and you can edit those patterns down here as well. One cool thing on FX Wizard, it actually has a stereo widener. Let's turn this up. Maybe we want to sync these out to in, and maybe we want to sync the delay. So out of the sync into the trig. Cool, maybe less feedback. Now let's turn up that stereo effect. Hold down shift. It can go really wide. You can see how this can get really glitchy really fast. And because of the type of modulation that you can do, say with an LFO going into the step modulation of the time based on this LFO. One cool thing is if you're getting sync, you can adjust what the clock div is here for the clocking of this device. Or slower. That will slow the LFO down as well. Let's see. We can do some fun stuff with this envelope follower, I think. Let's patch a blue one into there. And let's patch it into the free pitch. Because we're dealing with drums, so let's turn that up. Let's pitch everything down. cool thing is, because the patch bay has multiple inputs, we can just patch another input, say, from the sequence over here into there. That's cool. What if we wanted to get something from this LFO as well? It's a little tricky. There we go. They really packed a lot into a small space, didn't they? I was not expecting so many patching possibilities in such a small form factor, but they did it. I guess that just shows that Bastl's been working at what they do best for years, and that is making very fun devices that you want to mess with and be surprised by. Cool, let's go through a couple more patches that I made before we wrap up. In this patch with Bastl Kastle 2 wave barred, we have the sync out going into the trig. That's basically triggering it every step based on how fast it's going. So if we hold down shift, we can see the tempo there. So it's being triggered every step, and then what sample it's playing is being determined by a couple different things. On the Kastl 2 series, there are different patterns, and that is gate and CV pattern. And we're using that CV voltage over here on the sample mod. And what that is doing is allowing us to attenuate what samples that is playing. So as I move this around, we're changing the pool of samples or where that CV is sequencing. So we're having a repeated pattern because it's being generated by the CV pattern that's looping, but we can change the samples that are playing determined by this knob. The offset for the samples, or like where the samples are starting, is sort of this sample knob here, and as I turn it left and right, you change the sample. If we didn't have any CV going in to here and we just had the triggers triggered, we could just use the sample knob to go left and right. We're basically using the CV to sequence that sort of idea. Other than that, we also have this LFO impacting what the samples are. So it's just the square wave. So when it is high, it's adding in voltage and changing what the sample is here. And that creates a little bit of a difference, so it's not always this looping pattern. It's sort of determined by this LFO. The interesting thing is there's an LFO mod. I'm modulating that using the triangle wave. So the triangle wave is changing the speed of the LFO, and I can make that go faster or slower, which means that here we can make it sort of longer or shorter. The cool thing about that is that I'm using the square wave out from that LFO to reset this pattern. So if we made it really long by turning this knob all the way left, what ends up happening is we have a really long sequence, or at least it goes for the full length of the sequence for this pattern. If we make it shorter, we sort of cut it off shorter and we have shorter beats. We also have the square wave modulating the bank. So that's jumping around through different sample pools basically. Some are more rhythmic sounding, some are more harmonic, some sound like chords and different stuff, and it's just sort of skipping through. The other thing here is we're modulating the notes here. So the CV out is going into the notes and we're doing pitch mod here. So as we turn this up, we're also modulating the pitch. So we have CV coming out from that same sequence that's getting shorter or longer, and that's going out to the pitch mod. And it's an attenuverter, so as we turn it down, what's happening is those notes are going lower, and as we turn it up, those notes are going high. And because we're using the same CV to change samples, we have the same samples are triggered at the same pitches. So depending on, the interesting thing about Kastl 2 is that you have this idea of patching, but also whereas modular, you have a really good sense of like, okay, this is my voltage range and all that stuff. With the Kastl 2, you really just experiment. There's no exact attenuation over voltages, so you really just plug and play and combine your different voltages. Really, the signal routing is the main thing. Anyway, that is what's going on in this patch. So that's Bastl Kastle 2, Wavebard and Effects Wizard. Two very fun, glitchy, chaotic, patchable music makers. With a modular mindset, there's a lot on offer here. This won't replace your VCV rack, but it might give you hours of fun, making all sorts of beats and sounds. I'd say a huge strength for these two in tandem is sound effects. There's lots you can do, especially if you feed Wavebard samples that are complementing your project. I like the form factor of having these two little boxes, and that collecting more means that you have more to pull from to patch between. Just like in Eurorack. I love that they're battery powered. I don't even know how long the batteries lasted on these things. I haven't changed them yet. I feel like these two might need a little bit of a compliment. The Kastl art might be a good solution, but I wonder if they might be working on something for this platform. Can't wait to see the answer to that one. Thanks so much again to Bastl for sending these two along to me so that I can share them with you. For transparency, no money changed hands, and Bastl gets to see it just when you do. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. I make videos all about modular stuff and try to keep things pretty musical. They're not the shortest, but hopefully they're fun, and maybe you'll learn a little something. If you want to do something more to support the channel, feel free to buy me a coffee. It's basically a donation about the cost of coffee. Or jump on my Patreon. I'm thinking that I might post some more uncut jams from video prep over there. Links will be down in the description for all that. I'm also dabbling in lessons, so if you're just starting out on your modular journey, need some help with those few patches, or if you want to learn some new techniques that you've seen in my videos, or need a little help putting together a small case with compelling results, find me on Instagram or Discord if we're on the same server, and I'll send you a calendar link to book in. Thanks so much for watching, and no matter how big or small your setup is, happy patching.